We're just about to start. Well. I was around about 11 o'clock last night answering all these questions, and I didn't really know myself. And thank you very much for joining me yesterday. We booked Alan in for April, actually, and because we didn't want to bother him. And people were coming back to me saying, "Can you get him on again? We want to know more about his story and everything." And I thought, hang on for a second. We can't keep doing this to him. So part three, and Alan, welcome back.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah, since yesterday. We're not desperate. I was just about to come out and say we're not desperate for guests. But the trouble is, believe it or not, Marmalade was actually very popular. All right, and still are today. People were telling me yesterday they remember going to concerts and stuff like that, watching you guys, and all sorts of things going on. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, obviously, we did a lot of shows, a lot of festivals, and it was a really good time. I mean, I enjoyed the initial period of Marmalade was great fun. We were obviously we had a good track record of hits. I think our last hit was in 1976, maybe "Falling Apart at the Seams." That was our last hit.
Yeah.
It was a good track. It's still, I mean, I'm pretty much proud of most of the stuff we did. I'd say probably the worst, it's unfair, the worst single we ever made was probably Obla D, because it was a hit for anyone. It was just Marmalade did it. And we did a good enough version, but as a song, it's a really good pop song. But if you compare that to something like Reflections, I mean, that's a song to be proud of. But I'm just speaking as a muso. I'm immensely proud of Reflections and the fact that it's still become an iconic track. Great.
Yeah. With Reflections, did you? Sorry, I lost my notes somewhere. Everything's happening to me today. Who wrote Reflections?
Junior Campbell, the lead guitarist, wrote the music, and Dean, the lead singer, wrote the lyrics. So
that's it. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Campbell McLeese. And as I said, once Junior left the band in 1970, the band was never the same because he was the musical driving force. I mean, Junior's the guy that I speak to most still because he runs the affairs of the original band. We still own 54 recorded titles, and in fact we've just done we licensed the back catalogue, and we just licensed it again to BMG, so it's called Fine Cuts of the Marmalade, and it's got everything we ever recorded. Junior got all the tracks and digitally remastered it all and finished up a couple of songs that were unfinished. So I've got the album, I've given it to my kids and I sometimes order 10 at a go and give them to friends. They're always interested in hearing all the old stuff we did.
Have you got a spare album?
I'm just thinking the last, I found this one the other day.
All right.
It's not, it's got all the, it was a CBS one, because we were with CBS, which became Sony, and we were with Decca after Reflections we recorded with Decca. In fact, with CBS, we were produced by Mike Smith, and when we'd done the deal with Decca, one of the contractual things that we set up was we could go back to recording, producing, and doing everything ourselves. And the first thing we did was Reflections, and the best thing we ever did, really.
Yeah. And what was the idea what was the idea about Reflections of
Um,
the song?
it wasn't, although it got adopted by the American troops in Vietnam because of the lyrical content, like "Take Me Back to My Home" and "The world's a bad place, a terrible place, but I don't want to die." But it was because Dean was a sort of manic depressive. Really, he had a lot of. He was very introvert, and his voice is very sad. And it's a sad song. It's he wrote the lyrics to it. Who can Dean wasn't a guy that you could really get close to. I'd only got to know Dean in the last 10 years of his life, when I met in LA with him, and we were able to reflect on things from a mature standpoint. But Dean had a lot of issues. He was an alcoholic for 15 years, and I think that's probably why he didn't do his health any favors. He died with complication caused by Parkinson's, but all of the group except for me were heavy drinkers. So drinking that much alcohol, you do alcohol is I don't say as bad as drugs, but it does a lot of damage to your main body organs. So maybe that's why I'm faring better than most, because I was never a heavy drinker. I don't know. Maybe I'm just lucky.
I want to show people a documentary that you were in. I'll just get it up now. Skip
Marmalade the band, Marmalade the action, Marmalade the music. Welcome to a glimpse into the world of the legendary Marmalade, undisputed masters and most enduring practitioners of Scottish rock. Their continuing story began in the swinging 60s when, after amassing the strongest possible national reputation, the group scored the first of many international chartbusters that still resonate today. These embraced million sellers as diverse, upbeat, and instantly familiar as Obladi Oblada, right through to the heartfelt introspection of Reflections of
Where were
Marmalade.
you in the classes?
I mean, with the greatest respect,
remembered hits since
this
Marmalade
is not,
over passing
not Marmalade, really.
Hard-won experience and easy
It's got a
professionalism.
standing human group.
An ever-growing impact as a
Why-
concert
Oh, was
attraction
it?
suggests that, should
I
you choose to
left
do
the
so,
band
a climb to
because
contemporary
it was
prominence
no
is entirely
longer
feasible.
the Marmalade that I remember.
Yet another run of top 40 smashes would be a mere
Ah,
sideshow,
right,
while the
okay.
band cope with enormous demand that has resulted in a hectic global touring schedule that shows no sign of slowing down. Very much the opposite.
After original member
Counterpoising recent showstoppers with
No
timeless
original.
classics.
in the
Marmalade
band itself, Marmalade now, none. So it's almost a tribute to Marmalade, but I don't see the band out there calling itself Marmalade is anything to do with Marmalade, really. But it's just I suppose it keeps the name alive, but it's not the band that I remember as Marmalade. Obviously, you got no originals in it now. Graham's lives in Spain. I speak to Graham now and again. He's not been well. He probably drunk, I would think. Who knows? And he fell awkwardly, and he dislocated and broke his shoulder. And when you get older, you don't repair well. So the last time I spoke to him was when Pat died. Pat died last year, and we spoke briefly. So that two of the original members are now dead. There's only me, Junior, and Graham left of the original band, and we've no intention of doing anything together anymore. We joke about it, but it's never going to happen. I think it's best to leave the memories as they were, and remember the fun that I had working with, a great team of guys. It was a privilege to play with them. They were a damn good band in their day. Hello, Steve. Are you still with me? I've lost you there.
I'm still here. What
I wonder
what
what happened.
what do you miss? What do you miss most of all?
I think when you're in a band, you become like you have a gypsy existence. The most important decision you make is what you're going to eat. You're just on the road, and it's a great way of life, just traveling. And the reason I left in 1978, I wanted to do more, and I figured I'd done everything I wanted to do with Marmalade, and it had become like work. It was no longer a pleasure. It was grueling tours, and I just got married again, my second marriage, and I wanted to go into management and production, which is what I did. And uh, it was funny because I kept telling the guys, look, I'm going to leave, and they did nothing about it. And then it was like I said, look, in weeks' time, I'm out of here. So they found I can't think who took over from me, and they kept on ringing me and asked me if I was coming back, and then about 2 years later, I started to become successful as a manager, and I bought a Rolls Royce, and I went to see them at a gig, and they saw me turn up with a Rolls Royce, and I remember Graham said, "You're not coming back, are you?" And I went, "No, I'm not coming back." I was I had a really good lifestyle, and I was able to decide where I wanted to go. Whereas with a band, you don't really, you just go where the gigs come. Whereas as a manager and as an agent, I could pick and choose where I wanted to go. So I was a bit more pedantic about, much as I tried to delegate a lot of the touring to my staff, but the group soon worked out that if I was with them, that because I had minimal patience, and I wouldn't put up with bad hotels, and they always insisted they wanted me. They said, "No, but you're with us. You just don't take any nonsense, and if the hotel's all right, you rant and rave and storm out, and well, you just do it as a manager, because if it wasn't good enough for me, it wasn't good enough for my artists." So we try to look after the acts. I mean, it's there is a lot of fun being on the road, but it's also very hard work. Touring relentlessly is it's very grueling. You think I've been around the world quite 20 or 30 times. I guess there isn't anywhere I haven't been, and that's what I loved about being in the group or being an agent and manager. I love to travel and see countries that I wouldn't have seen normally. And of course, you're paid to go there, so you have some of the holiday, like we did 2 months in New Zealand. We were working for Radio Hauraki. We did the Buckethead concerts, and it's fantastic. New Zealand's a fantastic place. It's there's nobody there. I mean, it's empty. I think when I was there, was 3 million people in the whole country. But it was just a great tour we did, and then we flew back instead of flying back via Australia, and we went the other way. We went and had a holiday, went to Fiji, Hawaii, Los Angeles, and we went round the world the other way, and things like that I really enjoyed. That and it's like being on a non-stop Beano, a party. It was drink and women, and listen, it was for the time I was with the band, it was a great life. But like everything, there comes a point when you want to do more. That's when I switched to doing management, where I felt my knowledge of the industry could benefit up and coming young artists, which is we did take on name acts, but we also developed a lot of new talent. Some of the artists are still in touch with me, and they're very kind. They say it was the best time of their lives, and they got to see the world, and they got used to me traveling with them, and my sarcastic sense of humor and whatever. But we had a really good even managing people was a lot of fun, really, because again, I went to countries that I can't think that there were many countries. Just thinking where I've not been, it's harder to think where I've not been.
Yeah,
But I
can I
can't
talk?
think of anywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can I
Can
talk
I talk
about
about
the song "I See the Rain"?
Oh yeah, that,
Where'd
that,
you get the idea? Where'd you get the idea for that song?
well, England, it always rains, and I remember that I was really friendly with Graham Nash, to the Hollies. Then I was a big fan of the Hollies, and Graham I got to know, and he was kind enough to come to the studio, and although he didn't get the credit, but he helped produce it. And Hendrix, as I mentioned, loved the track. It's, if you hear the guitar riffs, it is. We didn't do we'd never heard Hendrix, so it wasn't a copy. People thought we'd copied Jimmy. No, it's not true. It was just that twangy guitar sound, and the riff. It was a great. It wasn't a hit in England. It was a hit abroad, but not in the UK. I remember being in the club, and I didn't know Steve Marriott, but he invited all of us back to his house in Chiswick, and I was with Sheila White. I was engaged to Sheila White, the actress. And anyway, we're at this, we're drinking like you always did after the club shut. You go to somebody's home, and then he said, "You just got to listen to this song," and he played "I See the Rain," and then Sheila said. He said, well, Alan's in the group, and I got to know Steve Marriott. And from that, I became really good friends with Kenny Jones. Still know Kenny now. And we used to hang out together because we both had minis, and we used to spend our time doing our minis up. And he lived in Hampstead, and I lived in Hampstead, not far from him. So, drummers just do hang out with drummers. We're all a bit odd. Drummers are on their own. They're always the odd man out of any group, really.
I want to talk about your books.
The two, yeah, I've written two.
Don't talk the messenger.
Don't shoot the messenger.
Don't shoot the messenger. That was really good. What was the idea for that then?
Well, what happened was, it will happen to anyone. I think it's not. It doesn't matter whether you're a rock star or a Tesco checkout. There'll come a point in your life where you will take stock of what you're doing and think, is this all there is in life? It doesn't matter what job you've got. There will be a point where you'll question your life. A lot of actors, successful people reach a point, normally at the pinnacle of their success, when they get to where they've been working towards, and then think, it's like climbing to the top of Everest. You get there and you think, well, what do I do now? I'm supposed to go back down. Well, at the peak of fame and fortune with Marmalade, I remember it when I remember the day, because I got married to Lena and I was on the front page of all the newspapers. And I remember staying at a really flash hotel in Mayfair, and I ordered all the papers. And I remember sitting on the bed with this gorgeous wife, Lena, who was striking, Swedish model, so beautiful. And I was on the front page of every paper, and I remember thinking, well, what now? What is this it? I mean, where do you go? I wanted answers, but so I looked into I looked into religion, and I found all of the religions didn't answer any of the questions that I had. So I got more into Eastern philosophies like Buddhism and Taoism and things like that. And then a really good friend of mine, an American called Susie Muller, who was a yoga teacher in England. Now, in the 1970s, yoga was really fringe stuff. It was really, it was not what normal people did. And she was from California, typical California girl. And she introduced me to a small circle run by a man called Marshall Lever called the Circle for Inner Truth. And it was about 30 people, and you had to be invited. Money wasn't involved, anything like that. And Marshall was a trance channeler, and he channeled a person that lived thousands of years ago and was a student of a Chinese philosopher called Lao Tzu. And so I attended these meetings, and it's like speaking to somebody that's lived 2,000 or 3,000 years. So it's all of the knowledge that Lao Tzu taught is really common sense, nothing to do with religion or being spiritual, whatever that is, all that's nonsense. It's about the meaning, the true meaning to life. And I had all these transcripts because Marshall, when he channeled the teacher called Chung Fu, we call him Old Chinese, he wasn't there. His body, his spirit, whatever, was somewhere else. So he never knew. So they recorded everything and they did the transcripts. And I had a copy of all of the teachings. And I carried them around for years. And then I thought, this knowledge really should be in the domain in case other people can benefit. So I wrote the 2 books based on the transcripts of his teachings. And the books, I called it Don't Shoot the Messenger, because I'm just a messenger. Whether you believe or don't believe, I couldn't give a stuff, really. It's your journey, not mine. But the information in there will give you an insight on maybe the purpose of your life. And although I'd never written a book before, but I was amazed at the reviews it got. It still sells, and it's almost like a guideline to how to live your life. It explains things that religion wouldn't be able to explain. It's not complicated, and the books are written exactly as we were taught. You have the lesson, then the questions and answers, and then there's a story. And it's just my way. Everyone's got their own journey. If they find their journey is benefited by being a Roman Catholic or whatever, that's fine. There's no judgment. For me, I found all of those religions just didn't answer any questions. And so the teachings of Lao Tzu helped me to understand the purpose of my life. And I always tell people, what you believe is up to you. It's a way of looking at life. He explains so many things that made much more sense than this. There's some invisible friend in the sky, and if you don't do what he says, you're going to go to some invisible friend down below and rot in hell. It's not about there in Tao, Tao, but it's Tao. There's the T is silent. There's no good and bad. There just is lessons and experiences, and you've been given a body or a vehicle to learn those lessons, and it's ongoing, never ending. You never stop learning. Life is a continual lesson.
Sorry for the phone.
So I always tell people, the universe is always talking to you. If you want to simplify it and say God is always talking to you, fine. But like I've had this row recently with I wear a mask reluctantly, but I used to tell people it's against my religion, and they go, well, explain that, and I go, well, are you religious? Do you believe in God? Yes or no? Yes, to believe in God. Do you believe man is born in the image of God? It's yes or no. Yes, you do. Fine. Does God get COVID? Does God get ill? So if I'm the image of God, how can I get ill? I am a manifestation of God or divinity or the universe or consciousness. It's a way of looking at things, but I never judge. If people are happy within a religious structure, that is their choice, and that's fine. I've met some wonderful Catholic priests who have a lot of empathy for people. Equally, I've had heated debates with Jesuits who are trained in psychology, and to me, anything that preys on poverty, ignorance, and fear is nothing to do with a divine God or presence. It's divinity, consciousness, the universe is perfect in its, and we are perfect. We're a manifestation. We just sometimes live in denial of the magnificence we all are. I mean, we all have our own gifts. I mean, I wouldn't say I was a particularly gifted musician. What I did have was a vivid imagination, which I still have. And we all have special gifts, and our job is to utilize those. It's not necessarily, I wouldn't say that money was ever been, if I get money, I just spend it. I wouldn't say I was particularly good with money. I'm sure my ex-wives would agree, but it's just bits of paper to me. And I know when I eventually do leave this body, I'm not going to be able to take one single penny with me. So might as well enjoy it while you can. My big passion has always been cars. When I think of my accountant once asked me if I was a car dealer, not a theatrical agent, because I'd bought so many different cars. But I just love mechanical things, cars in particular.
Yeah, but also women.
Yes.
Yes, Alan. Yeah, and
Yes.
that was my next stop. That was my next one.
I do have
You in the past have had several women, and you have had models and everything, didn't you?
yeah. When I look back on some of the girls I've dated, and if you saw my next wife, and I mean she's not a model, but she could be. And I really have no idea how I get away with it, because I've been around the block a few times. I'm no spring chicken,
I
but
know that. I know. Yeah.
but I don't know whether women, because of maybe my cheeky smile, I don't know. And listen, if it's not broken, why fix it? So, but
Yeah.
I had certainly had a charmed life. But I genuinely, I mean, I've managed a lot of women, and I think a lot of men. This is only an observation. They're out of their depth with women. Whereas I always seem to get on well. A lot of 2/3 of my friends are women. They're not bed partners. They're just friends. But I like the company of women. I find they're hardwired completely different to men. Bearing in mind that I spent 10 years on the road with a female Chippendale show. I've been up to 20 or 30 girls, and you've really got to have your wits about you managing a group of girls. And these were good looking girls, but I mean, they could run rings around men. They're just the way they think is completely different. Of course, they used to joke that with me that they treated me as another girl. I know it sounds odd. They said, but you're not like other men. You understand how we think. I swear I was getting PMT with the girls when we were on tour, and they got PMT. I'm sure I was getting crusty as well. Never cross a girl when they've got PMT, by the way, especially 20 or 30 of them. They'll eat you alive.
No.
We
It's bad enough getting PMT with the wife.
So you imagine you got 10 or 20, but a lot of the girls that toured with me are still friends to this day, and some of them are still strikingly beautiful. And they all say the same thing. Those 10 years with you was the best. It was like being a rock star. It was the best years of our life. We traveled, you looked after us well. Sometimes we'd have security with us, but you wouldn't want to mess with 10 girls. Most guys just didn't know how to deal with them. And very funny. They have a whole different approach than when they're pulling men. It's not like their pickup lines were basically their pickup line was they go in a club, see a guy they fancied, and go, "You're the lucky guy tonight. Just hang around at the bar, and when I'm leaving, I'll pick you up as we go out." And that was their pickup line. You know, it was not none of this buying drinks and meals and trying to charm the knickers off them. They didn't give a stuff about that. I mean, because they were good-looking girls, they called the shots. It was an education. I should write a book just about women, because most men, if you think there's loads of books written for women about men, you try and find a book written the other way around. There's none. There's no books written by men about women. We haven't got a bloody clue.
We haven't.
No, it's. I think I don't say I know everything about women, but I think by managing lots of women, you think Belle Stars, Mel and Kim, Amazulu, Lips, the UK Glamour, Sunday Sport Roadshow, Electric, but all women. So most men would have commit suicide. I mean, they will manipulate you because that's what women do. I think the best, and I love women, but I would say the best analysis is between men and women is that you think men like dogs, they sort of give them a meal, you know, a bit of rumpy pumpy and a beer and watch football when they're happy. Women are like cats. They're always thinking. Whatever they're doing, they're always thinking. And sadly, man, I've got to tell you this, every girl you're with has got somebody else on the back burner in case you screw up. And another thing women do so much better than men, they lie better than men. They're much cleverer. I've got a lot of respect for women, and
I know you do. Look, listen, I want to get to the point where you mentioned it, Sunday sport, because you were kind of like you're involved in that too. And the trouble is, one time that you're supposed to have someone said that you're supposed to have an affair with one of the girls on there.
Well, I had. Listen, you're managing loads of beautiful girls, and
Come on, Alan, come on.
The flesh is weak. I mean, if you're on time and a girl knocks on your door, you're not going to say no, are you? But I mean, the great thing is that I mean, I'm not boastful, but I've lost track of just how many girls I've known. Who knows? You know, I think after the first 1,000, you stop counting, really, don't you? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just you live your life that way. I mean, I know when I was in the band, and you just got a constant stream of girls knocking on your door. So,
what was that like? What was that like? Because when the band was going, and you can't, you couldn't go in, and couldn't even go and get a pack of the bags, or couldn't do anything. You're just locked into a room. There's fans outside shouting your name, or hello, come down, give us a kiss, whatever. What was it like? Because you couldn't move.
Listen, what's not to like? I mean, it doesn't matter if you're like Quasimodo. I mean, women are just knocking and just. It was great fun. I mean, if you like the company of women, and most normal heterosexual males do. I mean, bearing in mind in those days also, we were. It wasn't a problem because we weren't so snowflakey then. But obviously, we would get. I used to get hit on regularly by guys, but you used to go, get off. You just accept it. There was lots of gay predators around, but men never interest me. I mean, I wouldn't give a stuff if I was gay, but having had a prostrate check, I don't know what guys get out of that. They can jog on. Not for me.
No, not for me either.
I'm really quite happy with being with women. Hold on a sec. I'll just turn my phone off. It was. I mean, we did have a lot of fun. I mean, sometimes you'd wake up and you'd find there would be 3 or 4 girls in bed with you. So you'd have to ring down and say breakfast for 4. And it's all really ridiculous. How I had the strength to even play when I think of some of the shenanigans I got up to, but in those days I'm sure I couldn't perform the way that I used to in the old days. It was a very hedonistic lifestyle.
Let's move on. Let's move on before someone sells a story to the sun. You know what the sun's like.
Listen, we all did what guys did. I mean, I don't think Marmalade were any different to anyone else. We were just all normal guys, and obviously young and randy. What can I say? And I think drummers do, and I don't know why, and drummers do seem to get more than their fair share of women. And it doesn't seem to have stopped, thank God. So rock on, that's all I can say. I'm glad I was a drummer.
would you meet all these women? So, the last bit of what I want to talk about is where did you meet your last, your next wife to be then?
Kitty, I met Kitty on the internet.
All
She,
right.
she has no idea of that. If you meet them on the internet, the Kitty has no idea about when I met her, what I did. And it's only later on when she found out and said, "You didn't tell me you were a rock star." And I went, "Does it make any difference?" She said, "No, I think it's fantastic." She that's my hair. I said, "I've got to get my hair." She said, "Don't cut your hair. I love you looking like a rock star." And she's a big fan. She goes on all the videos, and she's not at all threatened by it. But then she's not English, so for her it's like wonderful.
Mm, mm.
Great. I mean, she's such a naturally pretty girl. If I didn't know, I'd have thought she was mixed race, but she's got a very aquiline face. She was born on the borders of Laos, in Thailand and Laos, so she has a very different. She has the Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam had a lot of French influence, so her features are she's naturally beautiful, very pretty, long dark hair, and she's a natural great cook. Obviously they all cook, and they have a whole different approach to life than Western women. As my observation, this is not a criticism of the English girls, because I've been married to 2 English girls, but there's a lot of angry English girls, and I think one of my friends pointed out that I was mentioning that English girls very rarely cook now. I'm a really good cook. And they said, well, you've got to imagine, if they're on a dating site or you meet them, they've been married to a guy 20 or 30 years. They cook, clean, look after him, and then he's run off with some floozy. You'd be angry. You think, well, I'm not doing that anymore. That's why a lot of English girls are not remotely interested in cooking. Or, to make it worse, if I cook for them, they go, well, I'm not cooking for you if you can cook like this. So you sort of shoot yourself in the foot, really. But
Are you moving?
am I
you
what?
moving to Thailand?
No. Kitty's living with me in England. We'll go back. She's got a house there, so we will go. I might spend the winter when it gets cold here. I might spend the winter. I mean, but it doesn't. She's happy to be wherever I am. It's the Oriental girl. I've dated a Chinese, Japanese. I think I've dated girls from every nationality, really. And my 2 legitimate sons are often joking that is there any more brothers or sisters we've got out there that we don't know about? And I went, very probably. I know my second wife was always joking that one day there'll be a knock on the door and somebody would go, Daddy, but it didn't happen. I know I've got a few scattered around, I'm sure.
Surprise, surprise.
Rock stars.
Surprise, surprise. Someone's knocking on your door.
It's a bit like, you know who Cheech and Chong are, don't you?
Yeah.
There's a great sketch. For those that don't know Cheech and Chong, if you could get their albums, it's all it's not visual. You just, and they set these scenes audio, and they're so funny. But I remember one sketch that Cheech and Chong doing. So one is he's playing Jesus Christ, and the other is the on the borders of Mexico. So the sketch is that Jesus is going through the borders from America into Mexico, and you hear this Mexican voice, hey, you with the halo and that, hey, what you do? Why you go to Mexico? And Jesus, and there's all this heavenly music, and Jesus says, I've come to visit my children. So the border control says, you have children in Mexico, huh? And Jesus says, I have children everywhere. He went, you're a rock and roll star. It's just, For those who've never heard Cheech and Chong, and I shouldn't recommend this, but if you had a split and listen to Cheech and Chong, you'll wet yourself. It's all based on that druggy humour. Very funny. They were a massive cult in America. We used to listen to them travelling back from gigs, and we just listened to it over and over again. So funny. You can just listen to it, and you can imagine the humour. It's all druggy based, but funny.
Okay.
That was when, you know, a marijuana joint, you just got a bit happy and you got the munchies. Not like the skunk stuff they're smoking now. When I was on set with Luke Goss, and we'd gone out to dinner, and he said, I'm just going to go and have a smoke, and he went outside and he was smoking a spliff, and he said, do you want a tug of this, Al? And I'm glad I hadn't had a spliff for about 30 years. And I just had one tug of it, and I was brain dead for 2 days. I mean, I couldn't drive, I couldn't function, and my girlfriend at the time had to drive home. So it's not like the old. I thought I'd just get a bit, you know, merry and get hungry, but it's like a cold clamp around my brain. I couldn't think clearly. It was weird. Never again. Maybe I'm getting too old for that shit.
Right, last 5 minutes. Yep. Got some questions coming here, quick fire ones.
Go on then.
Right, here we go. What do you think about the saga with Cliff Richard?
With the what with Cliff?
About Cliff, about you know, can you tell me more about Cliff, please?
Yes.
Yeah, right, okay. The message is like about all this. Hang on for a second. I'm trying to get the message here. Right, Cliff. Look, a while back, Cliff Richard had some trouble.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Alan?
I think it was a witch hunt, and very. I've met Cliff a few times, but we were with EMI when he was with EMI, and we'd done Top of the Pops, and we were invited out to dinner, and I sat next to Cliff, and you couldn't meet a nicer man. And eventually, he took me home in his limo, and we spent hours talking. I found him a very sincere man. He didn't try and ram his religion down my throat, but we did talk about his religious beliefs, and I'd say that what they did to him was very unfair and cruel, because he's at the end of the day probably the most successful male singer. I mean, not really my cup of tea, but as an individual, just a charming, well-educated, sincere man.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The Beatles and yourselves in the 60s and 70s were riding up the charts.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Beatles?
I think that they were the most iconic group that England's ever produced, and they really, you've got to bear in mind that not only did they change the music industry, they changed the whole social structure of everything. And although I sat on the table with John Lennon once, when I was with Graham Nash, and he got me to come over to his table and introduced me to Cass Elliot, and Dave Bowie was there. I knew Dave anyway, and John was on the table, but John was an angry man then. He was not an easy guy to talk to. The only guy that I really got to know was Paul, who later on, because of Denny Lane, asked me to join Wings. I didn't, but Denny still is a good friend. But Paul was very approachable, and I met him in the Revolution, and then I went up, and he didn't know who I was, and I went up and thanked him. We'd just come off Obla D, and then I told him who it was. He said, "Oh, sit down," and we spent 2 hours talking, and he was just lovely. He's the only man I've ever met, I have to admit, that the 2 hours I was talking to him, he was at the peak. He was everyone knew him, and I couldn't get out of my head, and I'm sitting talking to Paul McCartney. You just gobsmacked that you're just sitting talking to this world famous, and he was charming. Somewhere I've still got, because I was asking him about his dog, his old English sheepdog, Martha. She wrote the song Martha, My Dear. And I've still got on a cigarette a Benson and Hedges cigarette thing, he wrote the name of the breeder down, and I've still got it somewhere written on the inside of a Benson Hedges. But when I listen to Beatles now, they're beyond genius. It's the musical ability. I was never really a big fan of the Stones, although they did some good stuff. And I met Mick, the only one of the Stones I ever met, the Leo like me. So, but the Beatles, there's nothing ever as for me. Their songwriting ability, the way they changed the whole structure, being part of that. I mean, it was a real thing when a Beatles single was coming out. I mean, we couldn't wait to hear it. The excitement. Nobody has ever generated that, and I doubt anyone ever will again. There'll never be another Beatles, that's for sure.
Brilliant. Thank you. Alan, you had 11 top 10 hits. Well done. If I want to go and get into the music industry today, is it art?
Say that again. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, sorry. Is it art to get into the music industry
today? Yes.
Yeah.
Never been more difficult because it's no longer about music anymore, and that's why you've only got to listen to Radio 1 to realise it. Who would buy that? So it's mindless, nothing. I can't even listen to Radio 1. That's why the success of Capital Gold or all these other radio shows that play stuff, a much broader mixture of music. So, I mean, I'm working with Steve Glenn now, who was Mickey Most's right-hand man, and he wrote all the hits for Hot Chocolate, Bucks Fizz, Glory. This goes on and on and on. And he's old like me, so I don't really care what's happening. When people say you're old school, yeah, thank God, I believe in hits and real music. So the modern day music is much more about, as an example, when I go to America, if we were going to music festivals and we're pitching an act, the first thing that the label would ask is, what's their Twitter following? What's their Instagram following? What's their media following? Not what's their music. You see how the whole thing, and now it's much more superficial. With what you can do in the studio, you don't even have to be able to sing. You can auto tune it. Me and Steve only work with real musicians. We're not into what I call this modern music. It just doesn't do it for me.
It's a word. It's a word. It's not modern. It's trash.
Well, yeah. And sadly, you're right. I just can't listen to it. I don't like rap music, although I like the stuff that Will Smith did when he did his rap. I thought that was clever, but rap music doesn't do it for me. To me, it's just not music. And where Beyonce, I don't rate any of her stuff. Yeah, she's got a good voice, but the music is mindless. It's when you've grown up working with real musicians, you even going back to say the Four Seasons. You put on the Four Seasons now, every track you'd know. They're real music, real great melodies, great hook lines, and Steve Glenn is right. Where the industry's gone wrong, it's always about the hit record, and we work on that premise. We have the hit record, and then we marry artists up to hit records, not the other way around.
Good answer. Good answer. Right, guys, I've got to go, but this has been brilliant, really good. Thank you for all your free interviews this week. That is amazing. You're a good guy.
It's a pleasure. I'm delighted that there are still so many people out there that are remotely interested, because it's normally my mates when I go out and I'm drinking with them. They want to hear all these stories, all the rude stories that I can't tell on an open radio channel. But you can imagine how risque some of that stuff is.
Yeah. Yes, we are. I think my wife is booked in for April with Alan. I think she did, didn't she? April, wasn't it? Yesterday. Yeah. So we get Alan back again for more stuff. There you go. In the meantime, guys, I'm going to be back about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and I'm going to speak to Shipler. I haven't got a clue. It's the first time I've been speaking to her, so hopefully we'll get some good stuff from her. In the meantime, we've got to thank Alan for 3 times this week. He must have got fed up with me by now,
No,
and
it's just,
been brilliant, Alan. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to April. Come on, April, hurry up, hurry up.
you take it easy, Steve. And everyone out there, have a good weekend. Keep safe.
And you, bye-bye. Bye. There you go. And that was Alan. Fantastic. For Marmalade. So yeah, brilliant. Really good. Thank you very much, Alan. And yeah, that was really good today. And for the last 3 days, he's been doing that for me. So grateful. Anyway, I'm going to be back around about 3 o'clock. Tune in for 3 o'clock with 4 o'clock with Shipler. Sorry, why is it 3 o'clock? I keep mentioning it. Anyway, I'll be back. Yeah, I'll be back in about 10 minutes for some more chat. See you in a bit.